Hello everyone, I started this podcast to psychoanalyze the Avesta, and right at the outset I explain what I mean by psychoanalysis. It's an effort aligned with the psychoanalytic examination that Jordan Peterson conducted on part of the Mesopotamian creation myth and the Gospel, specifically its Old Testament. And I'll include the link to his lecture series in the appendix of the notes that interested friends should go check out the full analysis. In this podcast, for every topic we cover, I'll first explain Peterson's concepts and methods from these lectures, and then I'll try to apply the same method to related concepts in the Avesta, and this way we'll arrive at some interesting conclusions. I'll apply this process right here in this first part, where we're going to start with the concept of God. Peterson addresses many aspects of the phenomenon of God and its attributes in his lectures, and in this section, I want to explain and then expand on one of them. To better understand this concept, I will start with the Mesopotamian epic Enuma Elish and the interpretation Peterson provides, focusing especially on the role of the god Marduk in this epic. This is when Tiamat, the goddess of the waters, sets out to destroy the other gods, who are unable to fend her off, and Marduk volunteers. Marduk, the god with eyes all around him, volunteers to defeat Tiamat if the other gods accept him as king. When they do, Marduk goes in search of Tiamat and destroys her, creating the universe from her corpse. To examine this text and take it out of the realm of myth, Peterson suggests that one of the qualities the ancient people considered divine was being at the top of the power hierarchy, and in the stories they created for the god at the top of the pantheon, such as Marduk, the achievements that civilization had reached over centuries and millennia, the empowering feats, were attributed in the narrative to their god. In this story, we see that Marduk has eyes all around him, so they regarded the ability to pay attention and keep watch over everything as a divine power that gives its possessor an advantage over someone who lacks it. A much more important feature of Marduk is his voluntary confrontation with Tiamat. Tiamat was the goddess of the waters, and in myths, she symbolizes chaos and the unknown. In fact, the world can be divided into two parts from this perspective: the known world, which for us is like a walled city where we are familiar with everything inside its walls, and the unknown, chaotic world that lies outside them. Peterson, from the behavior attributed to Marduk, concludes that the people of Mesopotamia understood over the centuries that anyone who wants to rise in the society's power hierarchy, not so much inside the city and in the known that they gain no new awareness, nor so much outside the city that they are always in the unknown and chaotic realm and cannot create any structure. Rather, the best path one can take is to be like Marduk, paying attention to everything, confronting chaos on one's own terms, and from that chaos, creating new structures, taking spoils, and returning to the city, a world with structure, and using these spoils to add to the richness of that familiar world. In fact, the way we should view this myth is that people realized these traits give power to those in authority, and they generalized these traits to the abstract concept of a god who is superior to all humans and all gods. We will discuss this topic of chaos, order, and interacting with them in more detail in the following sections. In his examination of the Old Testament, Peterson uses the same method, and an abstract layer he adds is that God remains at the top of the power hierarchy, but after creation, he no longer performs any actions himself. Instead, the actions that the people of that time concluded were the result of divine empowerment and a means of approaching the top of the power pyramid are signaled through human actions in this book. In subsequent sections, we will examine the actions of various people, but the example I want to take from Peterson's words here, and then find a related concept in the Avesta, is about Joseph, who is Jacob's son, and in the Old Testament, he is described as being sent by Jacob to observe his brother's faults and report back to him. So, we can see here the quality of observation and keen insight that Marduk possessed. And another feature is that Jacob loved him much more and gave him a multicolored coat. Peterson interprets this multicolored coat as a sign of having a wide range of traits, and such a person can better adapt to unfamiliar environments and gain benefits from them. We see this trait in the story of Joseph as well, when his brothers sold him into slavery. Sold, he is written of both as a slave from whom all things were brought forth and as one who, when thrown into prison, was able to interpret dreams and thereby emerge to a high position beside Pharaoh. So again, we can conclude that in the society of the Old Testament era, these traits of attentiveness, insight, and precision, as well as the ability to benefit from unknown circumstances, are the qualities that elevate people to the top of the power pyramid and are, therefore, divine or God-like qualities. In this section, we come to the Avesta, and before that, I should say that I don't intend to say anything about the Zoroastrian religion itself or its traditional concepts. Friends who are interested in this area can go to the first link I'll provide from the YouTube channel for a more detailed examination of the Gathas. Refer to the first link I'm sending from the YouTube channel, where Ms. Sarush Marivar Kabli examines the Gathas very precisely. For later Zoroastrian concepts, the Very Good podcast also has several episodes that address this issue. Here, now that we've become familiar with the Peterson method for analyzing the Old Testament and the Enuma Elis, I want to apply that same way of thinking to the Avesta and see what conclusions we can draw about what the Avesta's authors imagined the mechanics of the world's power structure to be. In this section, my focus is on the Yashts of the Avesta, which is a collection of praises and prayers, and I have used Jalil Doska's translation. Yashts begin with the Hormuzd Yasht and the praise of Ahura Mazda, and we too start with Ahura Mazda and the attributes ascribed to him to understand this power structure. In this Yasht, when Hormuzd reveals his own names to Zarathustra, we realize that he too, without a doubt, is connected to the highest rung of the power hierarchy, where he says, "I am the most powerful, I am the invincible." So by looking at the attributes attributed to him and the people who were able to get close to him through their deeds, we can understand what kind of lifestyle that society considered conducive to becoming more powerful. The first characteristic I will begin with is specified in the Farvardin Yasht, again spoken by Ahura Mazda to Zoroaster, as follows: "Now, I truly make you aware of the power, mighty aid, and support of the Farvashis of the Aswan, how they came to my aid. It is from their fire and radiance that I uphold the sky above." Before we proceed, we need to familiarize ourselves with the concepts of Farvashi and Aswan to understand these sentences. The F is one of the divisions of human beings, like body, soul, and conscience. The F is the spiritual essence of humans that is present in everyone as a symbol of divine purity from Ahura Mazda, and its difference from the soul is that the soul is responsible for a person's actions and is judged after death, whereas the F is not judged and returns to Ahura Mazda after death. Ashwan are a group of people with a specific lifestyle. Here, the only characteristic of theirs that's important to us is that this group is close to Ahura Mazda, and in fact, their traits are similar to those of Ahura Mazda. Now we look at that sentence again and we see that there's a kind of loop, and Ahura Mazda, who is supposed to be the highest point of the power pyramid, without the Asho-Wandam group, he has no power, and the Asho-Wandam group also draws power from Ahura Mazda, so there is a two-way relationship that we call friendship. We can see the first characteristic of the master power hierarchy in this: it also has a collective aspect, and no one can occupy the top of the power hierarchy without a group of friends. We see this characteristic in the later Yashts, where Ahura Mazda wants other spiritual forces to be praised just like himself. We will address the topic of praise and offering versus sacrifice in the Bible in other sections in much greater detail. If we consider praising a spiritual force here as expressing friendship toward that force, then Ahura Mazda essentially wants everyone who praises him and is his friend to also be friends with those forces. This becomes the second characteristic that the authors of the Avesta knew for ascending the hierarchy of power, that there be a group of friends, and that bonds be established among all members as much as possible. So, we have seen the group characteristic related to the concept of God in the Avesta. In the Yashts, characteristics are listed for the deities and those whose stories are recounted, which can help in understanding empowering behavioral patterns from this perspective. Next, we will examine two of these characteristics, one related to the concept of seeing Marduk and the other to Joseph's versatility. To emphasize the importance of the concept of attention and of seeing everything, we examine the Bahram Yasht. In this Yasht, the god Bahram manifests himself in various forms, including wind, a golden-horned deer, a white horse, a drunken camel, a wild boar, a 15-year-old youth, a war horn, and a steppe ram, and in all these bodies he goes to Zarathustra, bringing him glory, healing, and strength. So if we view this from the perspective that Zarathustra, by virtue of his friendship with Ahura Mazda, stands at the top of the power hierarchy, the attributes attributed to him are those that the community considered valuable for becoming powerful. So what are these attributes? Zarathustra has the ability to pay attention to anything that comes his way and to extract useful things from them. The connection between this story and vision is made clear later in the Bahram Yasht, where we see that Bahram grants Zarathustra three kinds of vision. The fish's vision, which can see a ripple in the deep water from a great distance, is related to Tiamat, the god of chaos, and the ability to foresee chaotic conditions in advance. The second vision is that of a horse, which can see a horsehair in the pitch-black night and distinguish whether it is a mane or a tail. This vision is associated with keen insight and scrutiny. The third vision is that of a hawk, which can recognize a piece of flesh from a great distance. This vision is associated with the ability to identify something useful, no matter how small or distant. At first glance, we might consider the multicolored nature of Ahura Mazda's manifestations in various forms, but these forms differ from Joseph's multiple colors, because Joseph's were tied to the ability to perform diverse tasks, whereas here Ahura Mazda, in all these bodies, went toward a single individual, Zoroaster. From another part of the Bahram Yasht, which states of Bahram that he renews the world and reconciles peoples, we can conclude that Bahram is associated with seeing diverse things in different places, bringing them together, reconciling them, and creating new things from them. The society of the Achaemenid period considered this feature divine and expressed it in this way. To see the value of the multifaceted nature and its usefulness in various places, we examine the Tiryash. And in the section on sacrifice and offering, which is the next part, we see that Tishtriya and Bahram appear to have been closely related in the minds of the Avesta's authors. The Tyrisht is composed in praise of Tishtriya, who is introduced as a star bearing the seed of water. Many attributes and deeds of Tishtriya are enumerated, but in this section we focus on the sixth deed of the Tyrisht. To the part that says, first Tishtar appears in the form of a 15-year-old youth and grants boys to the people, then he appears in the form of a cow and grants many herds to the people, then he appears in the form of a horse and grants herds of horses to the people. If we take a step back from the mythological perspective and look at it from the viewpoint that Tishtar is a divine force that is friendly with Ahura Mazda at the top of the hierarchy, then the qualities it displays are those that the society considered valuable for becoming powerful, and they mythologized those qualities in this way. And this quality is the ability to manifest in various beneficial forms, each serving a purposeful function. We see that it bears some resemblance to the story of Joseph and the abilities he demonstrated in different environments. These two analyses I've presented are a small part of the possible interpretations of the Avesta to understand the psychoanalysis of power structures from the perspective of that society at the time. In this section, I've tried to highlight some of the features that are both unique and shared with the cultures neighboring ancient Iran. And if you've listened this far, thank you very much for your time. Until the next parts, goodbye.